2008 was a tough economic year for everyone. From layoffs to government bailouts to the home mortgage crisis, the news was all about how tough times are for the business sector. And it didn't take long for that financial pain to reach all of our pocketbooks, from Main Street to the State House. Today we'll talk about how a mid-year reduction in state education aid will affect our schools, next on Classroom Connections. Hi, and welcome to Classroom Connections, a public affairs discussion on issues important to students, teachers, and parents in the Des Moines Public Schools District. I'm Lee McGivern, Director of Community Relations. In these tough economic times, it seems everyone is cutting back, including the state of Iowa. Governor Chet Culver has ordered an immediate across-the-board reduction of 1.5% for the current fiscal year. That means organizations that rely on state funding, like Des Moines Public Schools, must find ways to reduce their spending right now. Here with us today to help make sense of all this and tell us how it will affect our students is Patti Schroeder, Chief Financial Officer for Des Moines Public Schools. Patti, thanks for joining us today. First, share with us why this call for an across-the-board reduction from the governor was made.
Well, the state has a balanced budget law, and that means that they have to live within their receipts. And the Revenue Estimating Conference reduced the projected receipts for the state of Iowa, and by so doing, then the governor then has to reduce expenditures as well. And so the governor called for an across-the-board cut. Education makes up 55% of the state budget, and so that means that we then have to do our fair share and participate in that. So we also got a 1.5% reduction in our state foundation aid.
So what does 1.5% really mean to us? How much money are we talking about from this year's budget?
1.5% itself doesn't sound that bad. However, it means for us that it's a $2.7 million cut in our expenditures. And we're in the last 6 months of the fiscal year, so essentially we've already spent 6 months of our budget, and now we have to take the 1.5% out of the remaining 6 months, so that's a 3% cut. So on top of the $2.7 million, we also know that we do a lot of short-term investments, and those short-term investments aren't bringing in the interest income that we had anticipated. Even though we're very conservative when we estimate that, it's clearly not coming in even at that. So that's another $600,000 loss that we anticipate in our interest income for a total of $3.3 million.
So what parameters did you use to make decisions about where to cut the budget immediately?
Well, of course, we want to keep the cuts away, as far away as we can from the classroom. So that's our number one parameter. We also want to make sure that those staff that are currently employed can stay currently employed for the balance of the fiscal year. So that's our second parameter. And we, of course, wanted to see what we could do to make whatever cuts we have to make sustainable over the next 2 to 3 years, because we don't anticipate that the economic downturn is going to remedy itself in the next 5 months. And then lastly, we have to do these reductions as quickly as possible, because we only have 5 months in which to balance our budget.
By June 30th.
By June 30th of this year, yes.
Patti, what people may not realize is making reductions with those parameters in the time you've got left between now and the end of the fiscal year is even more of a challenge, isn't it?
It certainly is. Like I said before, we only have 6 months, so a 1.5% reduction is a 3% reduction. On the same side, we have 83% of our funding is tied up in compensation. So if we're going to hold harmless staffing, and we will, then we're actually talking about 17% of the budget. So then actually that across-the-board cut is actually on that particular amount of money. In this particular case, though, we were able to find some unspent balances of funds that we are going to be able to leverage and use to really minimize the reductions that are going to have to be taken by the different departments across the district. Let me emphasize, when we use these unspent balances, nothing will change. These balances that we're going to use are dropout prevention, GT, and self-insurance funds. But when you use the self-insurance fund, no health insurance changes will be there because the district pays 100% of the health insurance, and so we will then be able to handle that, but there will be no change to staff whatsoever. And of course, we then have to look at the weighted funds that we have, which is special ed, ELL, GT, those kind of funds. They will then have to absorb 1.5% cut. And then categorical grants that we get from the state, they will also have to absorb that cut as well.
Patti, we know, all of us watch the news, the economic downturn is not expected to brighten anytime soon. What steps are you taking for years 2010 and 2011?
That's a good question, because I would agree that it's not going to get any better miraculously in the next 5 months. It's just not going to happen. So we are actually already starting our budget and plan. Well, we've been in process on the 2010 budget, and we will continue to do that. We need to take a little bit of a wait and see attitude because the governor will give a budget address toward the end of January and tell us if there are going to be any changes in our funding for 2010. At the same time, the governor and the legislature have to set the allowable growth for 2011 or our funding level for 2011. So once we know that, we're going to immediately move on and work on the 2011 budget. I have done a tremendous amount of communication. I've been talking with the unions, I've been talking with the administrators, I'm going to talk to the school advisory committee. Quite frankly, any group that would like to hear from us, I'm more than willing to talk to them and talk about how we're managing the across-the-board cut. For 2011, when we start to do the budget planning, then we'll work with the community linkage group, which is the Board of Education directors and community members, and talk about how best we should reach out to the community to get input on budget issues as it relates to 2011.
So bottom line, we're looking at minimal effects for the immediate fiscal year, but you're looking ahead to make sure that the classrooms are not as affected, the students are not as affected, maybe teachers, and planning ahead for some tough years financially?
Yes, absolutely. There are tough years to come.
So Patti, where do people go for more information about Des Moines Public Schools budget?
They should visit the Des Moines Public School District homepage, and from there they can get more information.
Thanks a lot, Patti. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us. And thank you for joining us. We hope you'll tune in for our upcoming 3-part series on zoning the district, where you'll have a chance to meet our associate superintendents. Until then, for Classroom Connections, I'm Lee McGivern. Thanks for watching.